My own father put drugs in my drink every night. I was only 14 when I discovered the real reason. The camera he hid in the closet was just the beginning of my nightmare. Good morning, my dear friends. What a blessing to chat with you today. Let me properly introduce myself. My name is Gertrude Wilson, but everyone here in Springfield calls me Grandma Gertie. I'm 78 years old and thankful for every day. I was born in Cedar Falls, but I've been living in this welcoming little town in Missouri for almost 5 decades now. Today, I live a peaceful life. I wake up early before the sun rises. I love watching the day begin while I prepare my strong black coffee, just the way we old-timers in the Midwest enjoy it. My house is simple, but it's my little haven. I have a small garden in the back where I grow my herbs and spices, basil, rosemary, sage, and thyme, which not only flavor my cooking, but also keep the bad energies away. On Tuesday and Thursday mornings, I attend the knitting group at the senior center. I started a little project there that makes me very proud. We, the knitting grandmas, make blankets, caps, and booties for the children at the county hospital. Seeing those little eyes light up when they receive something made with so much love. There's no money in the world that can buy that feeling, my dears. I began this volunteer work after I lost my Augustus, my husband, 7 years ago. It was a way to keep my mind and heart occupied. At first, I could barely hold the knitting needles because my hands trembled so much from nervousness. But gradually, each little stitch I made was like mending the tears in my own soul. My daughter Bernice lives 2 blocks away with my son-in-law and my 3 grandchildren. They come over for Sunday dinner, and that's when I make my special beef stew with cornbread that you can only find in these parts. Little Anita, my 8-year-old granddaughter, always says she wants to learn all of Grandma's kitchen secrets. As for Lucas and Matthew, the 12-year-old twins, they prefer listening to stories from the old days while devouring the biscuits that come fresh from the oven. From where I'm recording, I can see Springfield's blue sky through the window. There's a mulberry tree in the yard that I planted when I first arrived here. Just imagine how much that mulberry tree has witnessed, almost as much as I have. Sometimes I sit in the rocking chair on the porch, look at it, and think about everything I've been through to get here. Oh, my dears, before I continue with my story, I'd like to ask a little favor. If you're enjoying listening to me, please hit that like button, okay? And subscribe to the channel so you don't miss any of the stories that Grandma Gertie has to share. It helps me so much, you know? And you, my loves who are watching me now, tell me in the comments, from which little town are you listening to me? And what time of day did you find this chatty grandma? Are you having your morning coffee, or perhaps an evening tea like mine? I always read all the comments and I'm so happy to know where you're from. Let's create a circle of affection. You know, today, I want to share a difficult story with you, one of those that we keep tucked away in the deepest drawer of our memory. It's about betrayed trust and how, even in the darkest situations, God always illuminates a path for us to follow. It wasn't easy to live through what I lived through, and it's even harder to tell. But if my experience can help someone who's going through something similar, then it's worth stirring up these old memories. I'm going to tell you about a very painful time in my life when I was just a girl and discovered that those who should protect us aren't always the ones who really protect us. It's a story about medicine that didn't heal, about a father who didn't care, and about how I found the strength to change my own story. I was born in Cedar Falls in a simple wooden house, the kind that creaks when the north wind blows strong. My father, Oliver Wilson, worked as an accountant at the only agricultural cooperative in town. He was a respected man, always in a suit and tie even on the hottest days, hair neatly combed with brilliantine. He had that kind of upright posture that made everyone think he was taller than he really was. He spoke little, but when he did, everyone stopped to listen. My mother, Eleanor, was a skilled seamstress. She made dresses for the society ladies of Cedar Falls and helped with the household budget through this work. She was a small woman with nimble hands and a sweet gaze, always with a pin in her mouth while adjusting some hem. Her scent was lavender and face powder, a mixture that even today, when I catch it by chance, transports me straight back to my childhood. We were 4 siblings. I was the youngest and the only girl, after 3 boys: Ted, the oldest, serious like our father; Claude, the middle one, always getting into trouble; and Jerry, who was only 3 years older than me, and my great protector in childhood. The house was always full of noise and movement, with those 3 boys running here and there, and me, tiny little thing, always trying to keep up. Our house was on Maple Street, a dirt road with houses side by side, all more or less alike. The backyard was large, with a lemon tree, a grape arbor, and a vegetable garden that my mother tended with all her care. In the back was a chicken coop where I loved to go collect the still warm eggs that had just been laid. It was a joy when I found a hidden nest, full of eggs, and ran to show Mom as if I'd found treasure. We woke to the rooster's crow, even before the sun rose. Dad left early for work, always after drinking the strong black coffee that Mom prepared. We children had milk with cornmeal and went to school, which was about a 20-minute walk away. In winter, which is quite harsh in the north, Mom would heat a brick in the wood stove, wrap it in cloth, and place it at the foot of the bed to warm our feet. What a luxury! At school, I was diligent. I always liked to learn. I had a teacher, Mrs. Irene, who said I had beautiful handwriting and chose me to write on the blackboard. How proud I felt. The boys didn't like school as much. Ted made an effort, but Claude was always being punished for misbehaving, and Jerry just wanted to play ball in the field. In the afternoons after school, I helped my mother with the housework. She taught me to sew from an early age. I started making doll clothes and gradually learned more difficult stitches. While we sewed, she told stories about the family, about when she was a young woman, about how she met my father at a church social. She said he was the most elegant young man in the hall, and that when he asked her to dance, she already knew she was going to marry him. On Sundays, we all went to service at the Methodist church. Afterward, it was barbecue day in the backyard. Dad grilled the meat, always demanding silence to concentrate on getting it just right, as he said. The whole family gathered: uncles, cousins, grandparents. Grandma Matilda, my father's mother, always brought a banana bread with streusel topping that would make your mouth water. Grandpa Ernest played the accordion and led old songs in German, a language he insisted should not be lost in the family. The games of my childhood were simple, but we had so much fun. We played marbles, hide and seek, jump rope. There was a game we loved called Pass the Ring, where we sat in a circle and passed a little ring hidden between our hands. Whoever had to guess where the ring was stood in the middle, and if they were wrong, they had to do a forfeit. My best friend was Irma, the daughter of the general store owner. She was a freckled girl with long braids who knew all the news in town because she overheard adult conversations in her father's store. We spent hours playing house in the space under the back stairs, where we arranged our rag dolls, made by my mother, and served pretend tea in broken cups we got from the kitchen. Life went on like this, peaceful and simple, until my mother began to fall ill. I was 11 years old when she had her first symptoms. It started with fatigue, then came chest pains, a cough that wouldn't go away. Dr. Gentry, the only doctor in town, came to our house to examine her. I remember him listening to her chest with that cold instrument, the stethoscope, and then talking to my father in a low voice in the hallway. They thought I didn't understand, but I knew it was something serious by the way my father ran his hand through his hair, in a nervous gesture I had never seen before. The diagnosis gradually became clear: tuberculosis. In those days, it was a disease that frightened everyone. Mom grew weaker, thinner, her skin almost transparent. My older brothers, Ted and Claude, were already working outside the home, Ted as an assistant at the same cooperative as Dad, and Claude at an auto repair shop. Jerry and I were the only children still at home. My father changed after Mom got sick. He became more silent, more closed off, as if he kept everything inside. Sometimes I caught him looking at Mom with an expression I couldn't decipher. There was pain, yes, but also something more that I only understood much later. When I was 13, on a cold afternoon in June, my mother passed away. I remember the heavy silence that fell over the house, the absence of the sound of her sewing machine, the emptiness that remained in the place she occupied at the table. But mostly, I remember how my father looked at me at the funeral with a strange intensity and said, "Now it's just us two, Gertrude. You're the woman of the house now." Those words should have been comforting, but I felt a shiver run down my spine. I didn't understand at the time, but something had changed forever. In the months that followed, my father sent away my brothers, one by one. Ted was transferred to work at a branch of the cooperative in Burlington. Claude found a better job in Des Moines and moved there. Even Jerry, who was still young, was sent to live with Grandma Matilda in Dubuque to continue his studies at a better school. And so, before I even realized it, it was really just the two of us in the house, me and my father. That's when that strange nightly routine began that would change my life forever. It started right after my 14th birthday. I remember well because I received a light blue dress from my father as a present, the first that wasn't sewn by my mother's hands. "A young lady needs to dress like a young lady," he said, with a look that made me uncomfortable. At that time, I was studying at Lincoln Elementary School and always returned home before dark. The arrangement was that I would take care of the house as my mother had done, cleaning, washing clothes, cooking. It wasn't easy for a girl my age, but I tried hard. I wanted everything to be in order when my father came home from work. At home, my mother's presence was still strong. Her clothes were still stored in the closet, her thimble and needles still in the sewing box in the living room. Sometimes I would open her wardrobe just to smell that scent of hers that was fading over time. Dad wouldn't let me touch her things. He said it was disrespectful to her memory. "Leave everything as it is, Gertrude. It's as if she were still with us." The first time I noticed something strange was on a Thursday. I remember it was Thursday because it was the day to clean the bedrooms. While tidying my father's room, I found, hidden in the back of a drawer, under socks and handkerchiefs, a brown envelope. Curiosity was stronger. Inside were some photos of women cut out from magazines, the kind that young men kept hidden. I quickly closed the envelope and put it back, my heart racing. I thought, every widowed man must feel lonely. In my innocence, I wanted to understand, to justify. Dinners were silent. Dad wasn't much for conversation, but after Mom died, he became even more withdrawn. He would comment on my performance with household chores. "The rice is too soft. This shirt isn't ironed well." I tried hard to improve, wanted so much for his approval. It was about a month after my birthday that the medicine routine began. That night I was in the kitchen washing the dinner dishes when my father appeared with a steaming mug. "Gertrude, I prepared a tea for you. It's chamomile with honey, good for sleeping. I found it strange. Dad had never done anything in the kitchen before. This was women's work, as he used to say. But I accepted the tea, grateful for the gesture of affection that seemed so rare lately. Drink it all, he insisted, standing there watching me. It's good for your health. You have dark circles under your eyes. You need to sleep better. The tea had a bitter taste underneath that the honey couldn't completely disguise. But I drank it while he watched me intently. That night, I slept heavily, dreamless, a deep sleep like I hadn't had in a long time. The next morning, I woke up confused, with a heavy head, as if I had slept too much. My body was strangely sore. When I got up, I noticed that my nightgown was a bit crooked, not the way I usually slept. And there was a different smell in the room, like shaving lotion. I thought perhaps my father had come in to wake me up, but decided against it when he saw me sleeping so deeply. That tea became a daily routine. Every night before bed, Dad would appear with the steaming mug. "Your medicine to sleep well," he called it. And every morning I woke with that same strange sensation. Heavy body, clouded mind, and small things out of place. One day it was my hairbrush that wasn't where I left it. Another day it was the window that I was sure I had closed, but found slightly open. I never mentioned anything to anyone at school. At first, I accepted it as fatherly care. After all, since Mom had died, who else would be concerned about my sleep? But inside me grew a bad feeling, a suspicion that I tried to push away. I began to notice that on days when I took the tea, Dad always stayed up late. I heard his footsteps in the hallway when I was already in bed. Irma, my childhood friend, began to notice changes in me. "Gertie, you're different, girl. You always seem tired, your mind elsewhere." I couldn't tell her. How could I explain something I didn't quite understand myself? One afternoon, coming back from school, I passed by the Central Pharmacy of Cedar Falls. In the window, I saw a poster that talked about sleeping medications, with a warning. "Do not administer without a doctor's prescription. May cause confusion, dizziness, and temporary amnesia." It was as if lightning had struck me. The description matched exactly what I felt every morning. That day, I arrived home agitated, with 1,000 thoughts in my head. While preparing dinner, I almost burned the rice, so distracted was I. Dad arrived and, as always, hardly spoke during the meal. When finished, he picked up the newspaper and went to his armchair in the living room. Later, as usual, he appeared at my bedroom door with that mug. "Your medicine, Gertrude," he said, extending his hand. "To sleep well." I looked at the mug and then at him. For the first time, I noticed something in his eyes that gave me chills. It wasn't the look of a concerned father. It was something else. "Thank you, Dad," I said, taking the mug. "But I'm not sleepy tonight. I don't think I need it." His face hardened in an instant. "Don't be stubborn, girl. The medicine is for your own good. It will help with the nightmares." "But I haven't been having nightmares," I argued, feeling courage growing inside me. He took a step forward, intimidating. "Drink the medicine, Gertrude. I won't discuss this." I ended up giving in, intimidated. But as I raised the mug to my lips, I made a silent decision. I pretended to drink, keeping my lips closed, letting the liquid touch only the outside of my mouth. When he turned away for a moment, I poured some into the plant pot in my room. "There, Dad. I drank it all," I said, returning the mug. He took the empty container, examining it for a moment. He seemed satisfied. "Good girl. Now lie down and sleep well. I'll come later to check if you're all right." Those last words made my heart race. Check if I'm all right? Since when did he come to my room after I fell asleep? That night, I lay down as always, turned off the light, but remained alert. I pretended to be in deep sleep, breathing deeply and rhythmically like someone who is sleeping. Hours passed. I heard the living room clock strike 10, then 11. The house was quiet, just the usual night sounds, the wind in the shutters, the ticking of the clock, the occasional barking of a dog in the distance. Then, around midnight, I heard it. Slow, careful footsteps in the hallway, approaching my room. My heart raced, but I forced myself to maintain regular breathing, eyes closed, body still. The door opened with a slight creak. I felt his presence standing at the entrance, watching. He entered, and the footsteps approached my bed. I felt the mattress sink slightly when he sat on the edge. I wanted to open my eyes, scream, run, but fear paralyzed me. Then I heard a soft click, and another, and another. With my heart about to explode in my chest, I risked opening my eyes just a little, just enough to see through my eyelashes. The room was in dim light, illuminated only by the faint light coming from the hallway. And there was my father, sitting on the edge of my bed with something in his hands that at first I couldn't identify. Then he moved a little, and the faint light reflected on the object. It was a camera, small and black. He was photographing me while I slept. The horror of that revelation was like a punch to the stomach, but I managed to maintain the pretense of deep sleep. My father continued there for a few more minutes, taking a few more photos. Then, slowly, he extended his hand and pulled the blanket down, exposing my shoulders covered by the nightgown. Another click of the camera. "Beautiful like her mother," he whispered so softly I could barely hear. It was at that moment that I understood everything. The medicine was to leave me unconscious while I didn't even want to imagine what else he did besides taking photos. The confused mornings, things out of place, the crooked nightgown, the smell of lotion in the room, it all made a terrible sense now. When he finally left the room, quietly closing the door behind him, I let the tears escape. I cried silently, with my face buried in the pillow to muffle any sound. That night, I didn't sleep. I lay with my eyes open in the dark, feeling dirty, betrayed, violated by the man who should protect me. The next morning, I got up as if nothing had happened. I prepared breakfast, set the table. My father appeared, as always, dressed for work. "Did you sleep well, daughter?" he asked, with a smile that now seemed macabre to me. "Like a rock, Dad," I replied, avoiding his eyes. "Thanks to the medicine." The days that followed after my discovery were a waking nightmare. Each morning I woke up with a feeling of weight on my chest, knowing that at night everything would repeat itself. I continued pretending to take the medicine, but it became increasingly difficult to fool my father. He began to wait until I swallowed the last sip, carefully observing my throat to see the movement of swallowing. "Don't waste a drop, Gertrude," he would say, with that gentle voice that now caused me repulsion. "It's expensive, this medicine." There were nights when I couldn't avoid it. I had to drink the bitter tea under his watchful eye. On those mornings, I woke with that horrible feeling of emptiness in my memory, like hours stolen from my life. And small details always gave away his presence in my room. A strand of hair on my pillowcase that wasn't mine, the slight smell of cigarettes that he smoked, the drawer of my dresser closed differently than how I left it. At school, my performance began to decline. Teacher, Mrs. Celine called me after class one day. "What's happening, Gertrude? You've always been one of the best students, but now you can hardly pay attention. Is everything all right at home? I wanted so much to tell, to open my heart to someone, but the words got stuck in my throat. The fear was greater. My father was a respected man in town. Who would believe me? It's just tiredness, teacher, I replied, looking down. I have many responsibilities at home since my mother passed away. Mrs. I. Celine squeezed my hand between hers. There was sincere concern in her eyes. If you need to talk, I'm here. Sometimes carrying a burden alone is too much for such young shoulders. I left her room with tears in my eyes. That small gesture of kindness highlighted even more the darkness in which I lived. At home, I began to notice other disturbing details. One day, while cleaning the little back room that served as storage, I found a box with the name of the town's photography shop, hidden under old tools. Inside, several envelopes with photo negatives. My heart raced, but I didn't have the courage to open them. I knew what I would find there. Another discovery came when I was ironing clothes. In the inside pocket of my father's jacket, I found a receipt from the same photography shop. Development of 12 photos, urgent. The date was just 3 days ago. The isolation became more intense. My father began to limit my outings, claiming concern. A girl alone on the street isn't safe, Gertrude. There are many bad men out there. The irony of those words hurt me like a slap. Visits from Irma were discouraged. That girl only brings gossip into the house, he would say. Better to focus on studies and household chores. Even the rare visits I received from my uncles and cousins became less frequent. My father always found an excuse. I was sick, we had a commitment, the house was in disarray. Gradually, our world closed in on 4 walls, just him and me. I tried to write a letter to my brother Ted in Burlington, but I was never sure if it reached him. On the rare occasions when the phone rang and it was one of my brothers, my father answered and spoke for me. Gertrude is busy now, or she's already gone to bed. She has school early tomorrow. The winter of 1961 was particularly harsh in Cedar Falls. The long, cold nights made my isolation even more painful. It was during this time that my father began to take the medicine on trips. We're going to visit Uncle Alfred in Peoria this weekend, he announced one Friday. Pack your things. Uncle Alfred was my father's brother, a quiet man like him. He had lived alone since his wife left him years ago. During the bus trip, I noticed that my father carried a small bottle in the inside pocket of his coat. What is that, Dad? I asked, feigning innocence. Motion sickness medicine, he replied quickly. The road is full of curves. That weekend, for the first time, the medicine ritual happened away from home. After dinner at Uncle Alfred's simple house, my father prepared the tea in the kitchen. To help the girls sleep after the tiring trip, he explained to his brother, who just nodded without asking questions. The next morning, I woke up in the same mental confusion, but in a strange environment, the guest room at Uncle Alfred's house. The door was locked from the outside. When I was able to get out, I found my father and uncle in the kitchen, talking in low voices. They stopped abruptly when they saw me. Did you sleep well, daughter? My father asked, with that smile I already knew. Yes, Dad, I replied automatically. That morning, while washing my face in the small bathroom of the house, I noticed something that froze my blood, a purple mark on my arm, as if someone had held me with force. What else happened while I was unconscious? On the way back home, I remained silent on the bus, looking out the window at the gray landscape of the northern winter, feeling increasingly trapped in an invisible web. The weeks went by, and I noticed subtle changes in my father's behavior. He seemed more confident, less careful. One night, I found a notebook under his mattress while changing the sheets. Inside were notes, dates, times, and short descriptions. Gertrude in blue, G. With hair down, G sleeping on her side. It was a macabre record of his nightly photography sessions. The worst moment came when one day I returned early from school because of a heavy rain. The house seemed empty, but I heard noises in my father's room. The door was ajar. I looked through the crack and saw something that would mark me forever. He was sitting on the bed, looking at photographs spread out on the bedspread. Photographs of me, sleeping, in different positions. Some taken so close that they showed only parts of my body, hands, neck, legs. In some, I noticed with horror, my nightgown was in different positions than the ones I wore for sleeping. I backed away silently, my heart pounding against my ribs. I locked myself in the bathroom and vomited. When I managed to compose myself, he had already put everything away and was in the kitchen, as if nothing had happened. That night, I made the decision that would change my life. I couldn't continue like this. I felt that each day he was becoming bolder, and I feared what might happen next. At school, during the break, I searched the library and found a book about medicinal herbs. I looked for information about plants that cause deep sleep, trying to understand what he put in my tea. I suspected belladonna or henbane, herbs that grew in the fields around town and which, according to the book, caused the same symptoms I felt: confusion, drowsiness, dry mouth, blurred vision. One afternoon when I went to the town center to buy sewing thread, I passed by Mr. Arnold's electronics store. In the window, I saw something that caught my attention: a small cassette tape recorder. It was expensive, costing almost all the money I had saved doing small sewing jobs for neighbors, hidden from my father. But I didn't hesitate. "It's to record the classes," I explained to Mr. Arnold, who looked at me curiously. "To study better for the tests." He explained to me how the device worked, how to position the tape, adjust the volume, turn on the recording. I left the store with the recorder hidden at the bottom of my bag, feeling for the first time in a long time a spark of hope. That same night, I prepared my trap. I hid the recorder under the bed, strategically positioned to capture sounds in the room. I tested it several times to make sure it worked well. When I heard my father's footsteps coming from the cooperative, I carefully put everything away and went to prepare dinner, as if nothing had changed. During the meal, he commented that I seemed different. "There's something in your eyes today, Gertrude. You look like your mother when she was plotting something." I felt a chill down my spine, but kept a neutral expression. "I'm just tired, Dad. We had a math test today." He studied me for a few more moments, then went back to eating in silence. Later, as usual, he appeared in my room with the steaming mug. "Your medicine, daughter." I took the mug, looking him directly in the eyes. "Dad, what's in this tea that makes me sleep so deeply?" His face hardened for a moment, but soon softened into a rehearsed smile. "It's just a special blend of herbs that the pharmacist recommended to me, to calm the nerves and ensure restful sleep. Why the question?" "Curiosity," I replied. "Sometimes I wake up feeling dizzy." "It's normal," he said quickly. "Effect of deep sleep. Now drink, before it gets cold." I took a small sip, keeping the rest trapped in my mouth. When he turned to adjust my blanket, I discreetly spat it into the handkerchief I had prepared in my robe pocket. I finished the theater, returning the apparently empty mug. "Good girl," he said, running his hand through my hair in a gesture that caused me repulsion. "Sleep well." As soon as he left, I rushed to turn on the recorder under the bed and lay down, pretending to quickly fall asleep. My heart was beating so hard that I feared it could be heard by the device. It was now or never. Tonight, finally, I would know the whole truth about Daddy's medicine. That night, lying in the darkness of my room, I waited. Each minute seemed like an eternity. The tick-tock of the clock in the living room echoed through the silent house. I kept my eyes closed, my breathing controlled, pretending the deep sleep that the medicine should have caused. The recorder hummed softly under the bed, imperceptible unless someone specifically looked for it. When the living room clock struck 11, I heard the familiar footsteps in the hallway. Slow, cautious. The wooden floor creaked slightly under his weight. The doorknob turned with a soft click, and the door opened. I felt his presence even before I heard his breathing. He stopped at the entrance, observing. My heart was beating so hard that I feared he could hear it, but I maintained the pretense of sleep. The footsteps approached the bed. The mattress sank when he sat on the edge. I smelled his scent, shaving lotion and cigarette. Then came the familiar click of the camera. "Perfect," he whispered, so softly I almost didn't hear. So much like her. My stomach turned with the implicit mention of my mother, but I remained still. Then something different happened. I felt his fingers touch my hair, moving a strand away from my face. Never before had he touched me during these nighttime sessions. At least not that I remembered. The revulsion grew inside me, but the fear of being discovered was greater. I remained motionless while he continued stroking my hair. "Eleanor," he murmured, calling my mother's name. "Return to me through her." The horror of that revelation was almost too much to bear. My own father saw my mother in me, and that fed his sick obsession. I wanted to scream, run, but I forced myself to continue pretending. The recorder needed to capture everything. He continued for a few more minutes, taking photos, murmuring words I could barely make out. Then, something unexpected. He began to speak louder, as if having a conversation. "See, Eleanor? She's the spitting image of you when you were her age. The same hair, the same nose." His voice had an almost accusatory tone. "You left me, but you gave me her. A version of you who won't run away from me." I realized with horror that he was talking to my dead mother as if she could hear him, as if I were some kind of substitute for her. "The medicine works well," he continued, now in a conspiratorial tone. "She doesn't remember anything in the morning. I can do whatever I want, and she'll never know." Those words pierced through me like a knife. What else did he do besides taking photos? What happened on the nights when I really took the medicine and lost consciousness? Nausea rose in my throat, but I swallowed hard, determined not to show any sign of being awake. Then came the moment that would change everything. He leaned over me, his face so close that I could feel his breath on my skin. "Soon," he whispered, "I won't need the medicine anymore. When you turn 15, I'm going to take you far away. Everything is already planned. A little house in Ottawa, away from curious eyes. There it will be just the two of us, forever." Ottawa. A small town, a few hours away. He was planning to kidnap me, to completely isolate me. My 15th birthday would be in less than 2 months. When he finally left the room, I remained motionless for a long time, afraid that he might return. When I was sure I was alone, I let the tears come, silent and bitter. I cried for the lost innocence, for the mother who wasn't there to protect me, for the distant brothers who had no idea what was happening. But it wasn't just despair I felt. A cold anger began to grow inside me. I would not be his prisoner. I would not be my mother's replacement. I decided that, whatever the price, I needed to escape before my 15th birthday. The next morning, I waited for him to leave for work and rushed to retrieve the recorder. With trembling hands, I rewound the tape and listened. There they were, recorded, all his words, the proof I needed. In the following days, I carefully elaborated my plan. I needed to act quickly, but with intelligence. My first attempt was to try to send a letter to Ted in Burlington, including a piece of the tape. I put the envelope in the mail during a school outing. A week went by, no response. That's when I discovered with horror that my father had begun to intercept my correspondence. I found the opened letter in his room, along with the piece of tape. My blood froze. He knew that I knew. That night, when he arrived, I noticed something different in his behavior. He was quieter than normal, watching my every move with vigilant eyes. "How was school today, Gertrude?" he asked while I served dinner. "Normal, Dad," I replied, trying to keep my voice steady. "You didn't talk to anyone about family matters?" His tone chilled me to the bone. "Of course not, Dad." He continued watching me across the table, his eyes never leaving my face. "You know what happens to girls who tell lies about their fathers, Gertrude?" I swallowed hard. "Nobody believes them," he continued, "and then they're sent to boarding schools far away where no one can hear their cries." It wasn't just a veiled threat, it was a promise. If I tried to denounce him, he would use his respected position in the community against me. It would be my word against his, and who would believe a disturbed teenager grieving for her mother over an honest, hard-working accountant? That night was the worst of all. He didn't bring the medicine, but locked my door from the outside. I was trapped in the room, listening to him walking around the house, moving things, opening and closing drawers, preparing something. Fear consumed me. The next morning, he entered my room before the sun even rose, carrying 2 suitcases. "Change of plans," he announced, throwing one of the suitcases on my bed. "We're traveling today. Pack your things, just the essentials." "Travel where?" I asked, my voice barely coming out. "To our new home," he replied, with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "That special place I told you about. Ottumwa." He had advanced his plan. I would have no more chance to escape if I left that house with him. I needed to do something now, immediately. "Can I go to the bathroom first?" I asked, trying to buy time. He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. 5 minutes. In the bathroom, I locked the door and rested my hands on the sink, breathing deeply, trying to think. That's when I noticed, through the small pivoting window, the familiar figure of Mrs. Adele, our neighbor, hanging clothes on the clothesline in the yard next door. "She always woke with the chickens," she used to say. In a desperate impulse, I turned on the faucet to disguise any sound and dragged the small stool from the corner to the window. I climbed on it, opened the window as much as I could, and called, with an urgent but controlled voice, "Mrs. Adele, help! My father is taking me away by force. Call the police, please." The elderly lady looked around, confused, until she located me. "Gertrude? What is it, child?" "Please," I begged, tears now flowing freely. "He's going to take me! I have proof! A recording! It's hidden under the loose board near my bed! Please believe me!" At that moment, I heard my father's heavy footsteps in the hallway. "Gertrude, what are you doing in there?" The doorknob turned violently, but the door was locked. He started banging hard. "Open this door right now." I looked one last time at Mrs. Adele, whose face had gone from confusion to concern. "Help! I repeated, before closing the window and getting down from the stool. When I opened the door, my father was livid with rage. "What were you doing?" he demanded, grabbing my arm forcefully. "Nothing, Dad. Just getting ready for the trip." His eyes narrowed in suspicion. He pulled me down the hallway to the room, ordering me to pack my things immediately. While putting some clothes in the suitcase, my hands were trembling. I had made my desperate last move. Now everything depended on Mrs. Adele believing me. I didn't have to wait long. We were still in the room when we heard loud knocks on the front door. My father froze. "Who's this at this hour?" he muttered, more to himself. The knocking became more insistent. Then an authoritative male voice. "Mr. Wilson, police, open the door, please." I will never forget the expression on my father's face at that moment. A mixture of anger, fear, and surprise that distorted his features until he seemed like a stranger to me. "Don't make any noise," he ordered in a low voice, squeezing my arm hard. "I'll handle this." The knocking on the door continued. "Mr. Wilson, open the door immediately." He pushed me into the closet in my room. "Stay in here and don't make a sound, understand? If I hear your voice, you'll regret it." He locked me in the dark closet and left the room. I heard his hurried footsteps down the hallway, then his voice, suddenly calm and controlled, when he opened the front door. "Good morning, officer. Is there a problem?" From the dark closet, I couldn't hear the response clearly, just murmurs. My heart was beating so hard that I feared they could hear it through the wood. Had Mrs. Adele really called the police? Had they understood the gravity of the situation? The voices grew louder. They seemed to be arguing. I heard my father protest. "This is absurd. My daughter is sick, delirious with fever. The neighbor misunderstood everything." Then I heard heavy footsteps down the hallway, approaching my room. The door opened with a bang. "Gertrude!" called an unfamiliar male voice. "Gertrude Wilson, are you here?" I banged on the closet door with all the strength I could gather. "In here! He locked me in the closet!" Seconds later, the closet door was opened. A man in a police uniform was there, along with Mrs. Adele, who had a face pale with concern. "My child, what happened?" she asked, extending her arms to me. I staggered out of the closet and fell into her arms, trembling uncontrollably. The words came out in a torrent. "He gives me sleeping medicine every night, takes photos of me, talks as if I were my mother, was going to take me away today, to Ottumwa." The policeman, who I later learned was called Sergeant Quinn, looked at me with a mixture of shock and compassion. "The recording," I managed to say between sobs. "Under the loose board, near the bed." He nodded to a younger colleague who accompanied him, who immediately began to examine the floor around my bed. "Found something," announced the young policeman after a few minutes, lifting a board that always creaked when I stepped on it. From underneath, he took the small cassette tape recorder that I had hidden days before with the second tape, the one I hadn't sent to Ted. My father was taken to the police station that same day. As the officers led him out, he gave me a look that I will never forget. It was no longer anger, but a kind of desperate plea, as if I were betraying him somehow. I turned my face away, unable to sustain that gaze. Mrs. Adele stayed with me the whole time. It was she who welcomed me into her home for the first nights, while the authorities decided what to do with me. It was she who held my hand when I had to testify, telling horrible details of those nights under the effect of the medicine. And it was she who insisted that they locate my brothers. "This girl needs her family now more than ever," she said to Sheriff Mendez, a middle-aged man with tired but kind eyes. The recording was crucial. When the police listened to it, There was no doubt about my father's intentions. His words, recorded on that fateful night, revealed not only the abuse, but the plan to take me to Ottawa, far from anyone who could help me. During the investigations, they discovered the hiding place of the photographs. Hundreds of them, taken over months, some so disturbing that the police refused to show me. They also found the diary where he noted in detail his nightly sessions and bottles of what was later confirmed to be a potent sedative, which he obtained through a pharmacist in another town who didn't ask questions. The most shocking was discovering that some photos were of my mother, taken without her knowledge, years before. His obsession had come from far back. Perhaps she had suspected something in the end. Perhaps that's why she always seemed so sad and distant in the last months before she became ill. I will never know for sure. The news spread quickly through Cedar Falls. The respectable accountant, the dedicated widower, the exemplary father, now exposed as the monster he really was. Some refused to believe, of course. In small towns, people prefer to close their eyes to the evil that occurs behind closed doors. But the evidence was undeniable. About a week after everything came to light, my brother Ted arrived from Burlington. I had never seen him cry, not even at our mother's funeral, but when we met at Mrs. Adele's house, he broke down. He hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. "Forgive me, Gertie," he sobbed, using the childhood nickname I hadn't heard in so long. "I should have noticed, should have protected you." "It wasn't your fault," I replied, feeling an immense relief to finally have someone from my family by my side. Nobody suspected. In the days that followed, Claude came from Des Moines, and even Jerry managed to get leave from school in Dubuque to see me. Reunited again after so long, we cried together for the lost innocence, for the mother who left us too early, and for all that we could have been as a family if circumstances had been different. It was Ted who made the decision. "You're going to live with me and Laura in Burlington," he declared, referring to his wife whom I barely knew. "We'll enroll you in a new school where nobody knows about this story. You can start over." The idea of leaving Cedar Falls, a place now loaded with painful memories, was tempting. But there was one person from whom it would be difficult to say goodbye. "Can I visit Mrs. Adele from time to time?" I asked. "Of course you can," replied Ted, squeezing my hand. "That lady is an angel. If it weren't for her—" He didn't need to complete the sentence. We all knew what would have happened if Mrs. Adele hadn't believed me on that desperate morning. My father's trial took place a few months later. I was spared from attending thanks to the intervention of Mr. Cannon, a lawyer friend of Laura's family who offered to represent our interests. The sentence, 12 years in prison. It seemed little for all the terror he caused me, but it was what the law allowed at the time. The move to Burlington happened 2 weeks after my rescue. I packed the little I wanted to take, mainly clothes and some books my mother had given me. I left behind everything that might remind me of those dark days. On the eve of departure, I went to say goodbye to Mrs. Adele. She received me in her cozy kitchen with real tea and homemade cookies. In that simple but welcoming environment, I could finally ask what had intrigued me from the beginning. "Why did you believe me that day?" Many people would have ignored it. She set down her cup and looked at me with those wise eyes that seemed to see beyond appearances. "My dear, when a child screams like that, from the depths of their soul, only a heart of stone wouldn't listen. But there's more." She hesitated, as if deciding whether she should continue. "I always suspected something was wrong in that house. I saw the way your father looked at you. It reminded me too much of the way my own uncle looked at me when I was your age." My eyes widened with the revelation. "You too." She nodded slowly. But nobody believed me in those days. There was no one to help me. That's why, when I heard you asking for help, I knew it was true. And I swore I wouldn't let what happened to me happen to you. That night, I cried on her shoulder all the tears I had left, not just from pain, but also from gratitude. Amid so much horror, I had found an unexpected ally, someone who understood my pain because she carried similar scars. The next morning, I left for Burlington in Ted's car. As we left Cedar Falls behind, I looked out the car window and made a silent promise. One day, when the pain wasn't so fresh, I would use my experience to help other girls like me, other children who lived in silence their own private hell. In Burlington, I began my new life. Laura, my sister-in-law, was a kind and maternal woman, exactly what I needed at that moment. She didn't try to replace my mother, but offered the affection and guidance I lacked. Their house was modest but welcoming, with a small garden where I learned to cultivate flowers, a therapy that helped heal invisible wounds. The new school was a fresh start. Nobody knew my story, and I could just be Gertrude, the new girl, Accountant Ted's niece. Gradually, I made new friendships, immersed myself in studies, and began to dream of a future that, months before, had seemed impossible. The recording that saved my life was kept as evidence by the court, but its echo remained with me. It was that tape that taught me the power of one's own voice, even when whispered in the dark. It showed me that sometimes salvation comes from capturing the truth and not letting it escape, no matter how painful it may be. Today, looking out the window of my house in Springfield, seeing the mulberry tree that I planted almost 5 decades ago, it's hard to believe that the frightened girl from Cedar Falls and this 78-year-old grandma are the same person. Life has these turns, doesn't it? It breaks you into 1,000 pieces, and then, with patience and faith, rebuilds you in a different way, but perhaps even stronger. I stayed in Burlington with Ted and Laura until I turned 18. I finished my studies there, always with good grades. The sewing skills I learned from my mother helped me earn a little money doing small repairs and adjustments for the neighbors. Laura, who was a nurse at the county hospital, encouraged me to pursue a career in healthcare, but I had other plans. I wanted to work with children, understand their silent pains, their unspoken fears. Studying education, I became a teacher. My first class was kindergarten, little children of 6, 7 years old, with those bright and curious eyes that filled me with hope for the future. Each smile from those little ones was a piece of my own childhood that I recovered. It was while teaching at an elementary school that I met Augustus. He was a carpenter, a widower, called to make repairs to the school desks. A quiet man with calloused hands and a gentle gaze. So different from my father that he was almost the complete opposite. At first, I confess, I was afraid of any male approach. The traumas of adolescence had left deep marks, but Augustus had the patience of a saint. He never pressured me, never demanded anything. We started with short conversations during class breaks while he repaired a door or a window. Then came walks in the city park, always in public places, where I felt safe. And later, visits to Ted and Laura's house, who approved of him immediately. "This man has light in his eyes, Gertie," Laura told me one day, "and see how he respects you." We married when I was 26, in a simple ceremony at the Methodist Church in Burlington. Claude came from Des Moines with his wife. Jerry was already married and living in Rochester. Mrs. Adele, already elderly but still lucid, came from Cedar Falls especially for the ceremony. It was she who adjusted my veil before entering the church, with tears in her eyes. "See, my child? After the storm always comes the calm." Our marriage was blessed with the birth of Bernice 2 years later. When I held my daughter in my arms for the first time, I swore that she would never know the kind of pain I knew, that she would grow up protected, loved, safe. The move to Springfield happened in 1975. Augustus received an offer to work at a large carpentry shop in the city with a better salary and the possibility of partnership in the future. At the time, Bernice was only 6 years old, and I, at 28, was ready to start over once again. Springfield welcomed us with open arms, a city with strong German and Italian influences, full of hard-working and hospitable people. Soon I got a position as a teacher at Lincoln Elementary School, where I taught for more than 30 years until I retired. Our house on Cherry Street was built little by little, brick by brick. Augustus made almost everything with his own hands: the cabinets, the doors, the wooden floor that didn't creak like the one from my childhood. We planted the mulberry tree in the very first week as a symbol of our new beginning. "This tree will grow along with our family," said Augustus, and so it was. Bernice grew up, graduated in accounting, ironically the same profession as my father, but she never knew that. She met Richard in college, they married, and gave me 3 wonderful grandchildren who are the light of my days. The twins, Lucas and Matthew, were born first, and 3 years later came Anita, the little one who has the same eyes as my mother. I never told Bernice the whole truth about my childhood. She knows I lost my mother early, that I was raised for a while by my brother Ted, but the darker parts remained guarded. Perhaps one day, when she's older, I'll find the courage to share. For now, I prefer to protect her from these shadows. The years went by. Augustus and I grew old together, sharing the joy of seeing our daughter grow, form her own family, give us grandchildren. I retired from school at 58, after more than 3 decades teaching children to read and write, and more importantly, to recognize their own worth. When Augustus fell ill 7 years ago, I cared for him at home until the end. Pancreatic cancer, the kind that takes a person quickly. In 3 months he was gone, but he had time to say goodbye, to see the grandchildren one last time, to tell me how happy he had been by my side. I held his hand until the last breath, silently thanking for each day we had together. The pain of loss was immense, but different from that old pain of my adolescence. This was a clean, honest pain, a natural part of life. Mourning taught me that we can love deeply, even knowing that one day we will lose those we love. And that this possibility of loss doesn't diminish the value of love. On the contrary, it makes it even more precious. Today, my routine is peaceful. Besides the knitting group I mentioned, I participate in activities at the senior center here in Springfield. Twice a week, I volunteer telling stories in the pediatric ward of the hospital. Seeing those sick little children get excited about my stories, even if just for a few minutes, fills my heart with joy. My brothers are gone. First Ted, then Claude, and Jerry just 2 years ago. I am the last of the Wilson siblings, the guardian of the family memories, both the good and the painful ones. Sometimes, sitting in my rocking chair on the porch, looking at the mulberry tree that has witnessed so many years of my life, I think about how I managed to transform so much suffering into a peaceful existence. It wasn't easy, my dears. There were nights of nightmares, moments of sudden panic, scars that never completely closed. But there was also love, a lot of love, laughter, hugs, small daily joys that, added up, built a beautiful life. And that's what remains in the end. Not the suffering, but the ability to overcome it. Not the darkness, but the light we eventually find, sometimes in the most unexpected places. My dear friends, When I look back and see everything I've lived through, I feel I need to share some words from the depths of my heart with you, especially if you watching me know firsthand the pain I knew, or if you know someone who is going through this now. I learned that silence is the greatest ally of those who hurt us. That medicine my father gave me every night wasn't just to make me sleep. It was to silence my voice, my conscience, my power to react. When I finally found the courage to record his voice, to capture the truth, it was like recovering a little piece of my own existence that was being stolen. Fear paralyzed me for a long time. Fear that they wouldn't believe me, fear of losing the little I had left, fear of the unknown. But I discovered that as frightening as it is to face the monster, living under its domain is much worse. There are nights when I still wake up frightened, remembering the creak of my bedroom door opening in the darkness. But now I know that it was just a few years of a long and, for the most part, happy life. When you're at the bottom of the well, it seems impossible to see the light. I couldn't imagine a life beyond that house in Cedar Falls, beyond that daily terror. But life has a surprising ability to open paths where before we only saw walls. Mrs. Adele appeared when I needed her most. Then came Ted and Laura, and later Augustus, my companion for almost 5 decades. For a long time, I carried with me the shame of what happened, as if it were my fault somehow. It took me time to understand that the only person who should feel shame was him, never me. The guilt was never mine, nor is it yours if you are going through something similar. I also discovered that our greatest strength sometimes comes from the most unexpected places. In my case, it was a small cassette tape recorder bought with my savings from sewing jobs. It was that tape, that irrefutable evidence, that set me free. Sometimes all we need is a small tool. It could be a hidden diary, a message sent to someone trustworthy, a cry through the bathroom window as mine was. The nightmares don't end overnight. Even after I was free, even living with Ted and Laura in Burlington, the shadows haunted me for a long time. I had to learn to trust again, to sleep without fear, to believe that I deserved good things. It was a long journey, with advances and retreats. But each small step took me further from that dark room. What saved me, besides the help of those angels who crossed my path, was finding a greater purpose. As a teacher, I was able to protect and empower hundreds of children over the years. Each time I noticed signs of abuse in a student and was able to intervene, it was like rescuing a little piece of that girl I once was. I know that for those who are suffering now, these words may seem distant, almost impossible. But I want you to know, there is a way out. There are people who will believe you. There is a life, a beautiful life, waiting after the storm. And for you, my dear viewers who have followed me this far, who have shared this painful journey with me, I ask from the bottom of my heart, be attentive. Sometimes a cry for help comes in a whisper, in a downcast look, in a subtle change of behavior. If a child or teenager around you shows signs that something is wrong, please believe them. Investigate. Ask. Be the Mrs. Adele in someone's life. And if you liked my story, if it touched your heart in some way, please hit that subscribe button and activate the bell. Your subscription to the channel isn't just a number. It's a sign that stories like mine need to be heard, that the silence needs to be broken. Also, leave a comment with the word courage, just so I know you've come this far with me. Do this now. Don't wait another minute.